What's good YouTube, it's White Mike, and today I wanted to talk about the much anticipated announcement of the Sony FX3 cinema camera. But before we get started, if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please take the time to subscribe as it really helps the channel grow. So the FX3 was rumored to be announced today, and for the most part, all the specs had leaked out before the event went live. I mean, even I had recorded a video on those specs and speculation around some features, but with the timing of it being so soon, I pretty much scrapped that video so that I can make one on the day of, and here we are. So the FX3, what is it exactly and who is it for? In a nutshell, the FX3 is just a cinema version of the a7S III. So what does that mean? Basically, you're getting the same sensor, the same specs, but in a body designed to be more ergonomically a traditional cinema camera as opposed to a traditional hybrid camera. I'm not really going to deep dive into the specs because if you're already familiar with the a7S III, then you are already familiar with what this thing can do. But basically, it's the same 12.1 megapixel sensor, but since it is a video camera, it's only utilizing 10.2 megapixels for that ratio. You're getting 4K up to 120p, 1080p up to 240p, and 4K RAW up to 60p in 16-bit through the HDMI. It has the same 10-bit codecs, however, includes S-Cinetone, the same 15 plus stops to dynamic range, and ISO range of 80 to 409,600, and of course the dual CF Express Type A and SD card slots. The autofocus system, however, is the same that's in the FX6, which only supports human eyes for IAF, and if it's anything like what Philip Bloom noted in the FX6 review and the quirks he kind of faced with that camera, I'd be confident in saying the a7S III focus is a bit better. So what exactly is different then? Well, for one, as I mentioned before, the button layout is more on the side of video-centric and in line with the other cinema cameras except for the lack of ND filters built in, but it does sport the IBIS from the S3 with the active stabilization. It also touts a compact form factor closer to the A7C with no viewfinder and advertises having cage-free operation. However, I'm sure they will still make a cage for this thing if you need that flexibility for different mounting points to be anywhere outside the provided mounts, and maybe you want to have like RE grips and things like that. Although you lose the viewfinder and the true hybridness of what the a7S III can offer, you do get in the box the top handle with XLR module, which excludes the microphone, which isn't a new thing that Sony has done, as they also have the K2M and K3M XLR modules for their still-centric cameras that also do video, such as the a7S III. But it does come at a pretty steep price tag, however, that is with the included microphone. With the ergonomics being a big part of this release, I wanted to point out that it includes up to 6 custom buttons, a record button on the front and top, as well as several recording lights which can tell you that the camera is recording from pretty much any angle. They have repurposed the on and off switch near the shutter release to be the power zoom toggle. So if you're a cine shooter who also uses the PZ power zoom lenses, this is great as you can go from wide to tight, and the ergo altogether has been based on single hand operation aside from the power button being moved to the left side on the back. Speaking of the back, one thing that rumors got wrong was the screen. They had all assumed it was including a mechanism to allow the screen to go into different directions, similar to something you'd see on the Lumix line of cameras like the S1. However, it turns out the back is more bulky due to the inclusion of a fan cooling system, which can be turned off if it is too loud. All the button defaults are video-centric, so you have dedicated buttons for the focus magnification, zebras, peaking, shutter, as well as iris, ISO, and white balance. The other cool thing they did was put the joystick on the top of the camera, so I thought that was pretty cool. The handle itself allows you to have 2 XLR inputs with gain controls, low cut, and even the ability to turn off the handle audio with a switch. The ports on the camera are nothing unusual, just the standard microphone jack, headphone jack, USB-C, standard USB, and full-size HDMI. You're now, however, greeted with cooling grills near the ports and the bottom of the camera, so it's going to be key to kind of keep those things free from obstructions. Last but not least, it comes in at only 640 grams or 1 pound 4 ounces, which is, believe it or not, actually 28 grams heavier than the a7S III, which is excluding the battery and memory card. If you throw in the battery and memory card, the FX3 is 715 grams, so you can do the math there. you're not really saving any weight over the a7S III, though it may look somewhat smaller. Now, as far as the price tag, the FX3 comes in at $3,898, which is $400 more than the a7S III. And honestly, I think you're paying more for the same camera. However, you can now say you have a cinema camera, so I guess congratulations, I guess you're officially a pro. With that being said, here are my thoughts on the camera and who it's for. I think everyone initially expected this to be some 8K killer camera, and of course it isn't that. I do, however, feel Sony just needed a way to get the camera world to use the a7S III cameras on professional sets by building one and branding it as a cinema camera, because I've seen a lot of posts around various groups where people would say things like, if you show up at a professional shoot with an a7S III, they're gonna laugh at you. But the FX3 now is totally acceptable, I assume. So I'm not sure about the whole logic there. It just seems like a gear snob thing to me, but whatever. Everyone has their opinion, but as long as the end product represents that quality that you're looking for, that's all that really matters if you ask me. So moving on from that rant, the camera itself, while not anything new, it is innovating to see that Sony is willing to put something with their cinema line that reflects more or less what most of us have already been really using, which is a hybrid mirrorless camera. And at the price it currently is, it's definitely affordable and will put it into the hands of more users. I really like the tally lights built in and would hope they could, somehow incorporate this into the next version of the a7S, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I guess that brings up a good question. If you have the a7S III, should you sell it and upgrade to the FX3? I personally will not be doing that because I'm more of a hybrid shooter, but I will be picking up one as soon as they are on the used market, and just to have it as a dedicated video camera. Unless you're a straight up video shooter and want to say you have a cinema camera, there's really no reason that I can find to sell your a7S III and pick this thing up instead. I mean, you're already going to be paying more, plus taking a loss on the used market, so I guess the decision is kind of up to you. I feel like this camera is more geared towards someone who already has an FX6 or FX9 and needs a smaller camera for run and gun things, gimbal work, crash cams, etc. Now don't get me wrong, it is a great camera and a great addition to the cinema line. I just wouldn't call it groundbreaking. In regards to the top handle, it's awesome that they threw this in, but I wish it would have included a microphone. I have owned the K2M before and just didn't find it necessary, as all my audio recorded is usually external, and it just created a lot of unnecessary bulk. If I had to record XLR into my camera directly today, I'd use my H6 or just wouldn't do it at all, because I like to have my audio away from my camera. And for something like the FX3, which may end up being a B cam most of the time, it may only be picking up scratch audio. I think the bigger question now is, where does this put the a7 IV, and when will we start to actually see 8K outside of the A1? Alright guys, so that's it for this. As always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I'll get back to you immediately. Subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Hit the notification bell if that's something you're into. That's a wrap.